The Golden State Warriors have dominated the NBA for the last 5 years in a row, winning 3 out of the last 5 championships. They broke records on a nightly basis during their dynastic run, and they helped usher in a new era of three-point focused offenses around the league. The Warriors are one of the greatest teams to ever play this game, and they turned the entire culture around in their organization in only 5 years. With all that being said, the Warriors weren't always the juggernaut that we've come to know. They were actually a pretty bad ball club for most of their history. So exactly how bad were the Golden State Warriors before 2015? Starting at the late 40s to 60s, the Warriors were one of the first teams in the Basketball Association of America, or the BAA. Located in Philadelphia, the Warriors were the first champions in NBA history, winning the title in 1947. The Warriors had some early success with some guys that made the Hall of Fame way back in the 40s and 50s. The Warriors went to the finals in 1947, 1948, and 1956, winning in 1947 and 1956. The BAA eventually merged with the NBA while still recognizing the Warriors' first title. The Warriors were a quite successful franchise in their early years with 3 eventual Hall of Famers. After drafting Wilt Chamberlain in 1959, the Warriors were poised to be a strong team going forward. Shortly after, the Warriors drafted Hall of Fame big man Nate Thurmond with the 3rd pick in the 1963 NBA draft. Wilt Chamberlain only lasted about 7 seasons with the Warriors, where he won league MVP while also leading the team to the finals in 1964, where they ended up losing to the Boston Celtics. The Warriors subsequently traded Chamberlain and ended up only winning 17 games the following season. The Warriors drafted Rick Barry following Chamberlain's departure, where he led the team all the way to the NBA Finals, where they lost to Wilt Chamberlain's new team, the Philadelphia 76ers. Jumping to the 1970s, we have the Rick Barry era. Frustrated with ownership not giving him his desired bonuses, Barry left the Warriors to join the ABA for a few years before eventually returning to the Dubs. The Warriors became awful after his departure, and they ended up moving from San Francisco to Oakland in Barry's absence. Thurmond departed the Warriors in a trade with the Bulls the offseason immediately before the Warriors won the title in 1975. The Warriors managed to upset a favored Washington Bullets team in the 1975 NBA Finals, with Rick Barry winning the Finals MVP. Prior to the dynasty in the 2010s, these were the most successful years in Warriors basketball. The Warriors were a consistent playoff team that managed to stay competitive largely due to Rick Barry. This is where everything goes to the gutter. A once successful organization, the Warriors had their worst stretch of poor decision-making as an organization in their history. The Warriors made so many mistakes during the 80s with drafting and trades that cost them a chance of competing with the Lakers and Celtics. The Warriors had the 5th pick in the 1978 NBA draft, where they took Purvis Short, 1 pick ahead of the legend himself, Larry Bird. Had the ownership taken Bird, the Warriors could have had a dynasty in the 80s, since the Celtics would have never rose to dominance, and perhaps they would have stopped the Lakers in the West as well. Future Hall of Famer Robert Parrish was drafted by the Warriors in 1976, just a year after they'd won the title. Unfortunately, he joined the team at a time where the roster got largely overhauled, and guys like Rick Barry and Jamal Wilkes had moved on from the team. So Parrish got a lot of blame for the losing that the team experienced. The Warriors eventually traded Parrish to the Celtics, who were just beginning their dynastic run. The Warriors received the number 1 pick in the 1980 NBA draft from the Celtics, where they took Joe Barry Carroll. 2 picks later, the Celtics drafted future Hall of Famer Kevin McHale. The ownership had the opportunity right there, but they screwed up the pick and gave 2 future Hall of Famers to the Celtics in the process. Joe Barry Carroll was cited as being a player that didn't have the motivation to improve, much like Andrew Wiggins was considered at the beginning of his career, and Carroll is cited as being one of the biggest busts in NBA history. It can't get any worse, right? The Warriors had a lot of players they received through poor trades that bounced around the league due to the drug epidemic of the 80s. The Warriors passed on a lot of star players like Clyde Drexler in the 1983 draft, and when they did receive stars like Ralph Sampson, they were old or battling serious injuries before they retired, left, or got traded elsewhere. The 80s were absolutely rough for the Warriors, with losing seasons basically the entire decade. Things didn't turn around until they hired George Karl and assembled the Run TMC era. The Run TMC era was the most successful group the Warriors have had after the Rick Barry era and before the 2010s dynasty. Run TMC consisted of Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin. The name was derived from a popular music group at the time called Run DMC. Hardaway, Mullins, and Richmond developed into one of the best star-studded big threes in the NBA. The three of them all averaged over 20 points per game while they played together. The trio had a fair amount of success during their 3 short seasons together, but they were still a few pieces away from being a real contender for the championship. The squad fell short against the Lakers in their final season as a trio, where Mitch Richmond eventually got traded to the Sacramento Kings in the offseason. Following that, the Warriors drafted relatively well during the early 90s. A handful of their draft picks from 1990 to 1994 became All-Stars, with notable draft selections like Latrell Sprewell and Penny Hardaway. But the front office ended up trading Penny Hardaway to the Magic for Chris Webber, since the Magic really wanted to get Hardaway along with additional assets. Unfortunately, the Webber trade didn't quite pan out for the Warriors, since Webber had issues with the Warriors head coach Don Nelson. Webber was a huge factor in getting the Warriors back to the playoffs after a rocky 1993 season. The clash between Webber and Nelson ended up being too significant for the two to coexist on the team, and Webber eventually demanded he got traded off of the Warriors after his rookie season. Poor draft decisions continued to plague the Warriors, like taking one of the biggest busts ever in Joe Smith with the first pick in the 1995 NBA draft, ahead of the likes of Kevin Garnett and Rasheed Wallace. The Warriors also screwed up by drafting some guy named Todd Fuller over Kobe, Steve Nash, Peja, Jermaine O'Neal, and probably literally anyone else in that class in 1996. The Warriors eventually traded mainstay Chris Mullins to the Pacers, while their best player, Latrell Sprewell, got suspended for an entire season for coaching the Warriors head coach PJ Carlesimo. The few times the Warriors made good draft decisions, they would always end up trading the pick away. They took Vince Carter 5th overall in the 1998 NBA draft, but they ended up trading him to the Raptors for Antoine Jamison. The Warriors just never seemed to be able to draft well or keep their good draft selections long enough for them to build a championship contending team. The 90s were pretty up and down for the Warriors, and they made very little progress and continued to remain a mediocre franchise for most of the 2000s. The 2000s were very much a struggle for the Warriors organization, but the foundation was set for this team to become great. The Warriors featured a number of well-known names like Gilbert Arenas, Jason Richardson, Monte Ellis, Antoine Jamison, Baron Davis, and Steven Jackson, just to name a few. The Warriors had a lot of talent on these squads, but these teams never really amounted to anything. The Warriors never made the playoffs from 1994 to 2006. The single season the Warriors did manage to make the playoffs was, of course, the We Believe year. I won't get too much into that, since many of you know all about the We Believe Warriors. As you all know, the 2007 Warriors pulled off the massive upset of the 67-win Dallas Mavericks as an 8th seed. They managed to achieve the amazing feat mainly because coach Don Nelson had worked with the Mavericks the prior season, meaning he knew Dirk's exact weaknesses. The Warriors went on to lose in the next round to the Utah Jazz. Being in the West was no benefit to the Warriors either, as their following season kept them out of the playoffs with a 48-34 record. All 8 of the playoff teams in the West had won at least 50 games that year. After barely missing the playoffs, the Warriors continued to have a multitude of losing seasons for the remainder of the 2000s. They wasted a majority of their draft selections for the latter half of the decade, except for one. The biggest turning point of the Warriors' history came when Stephen Curry was drafted in 2009 with the 7th pick, becoming a dynasty. The 2010s were the era where the Warriors became the juggernaut we've known today. The Warriors were pretty awful in Stephen Curry's first season. The team only won 26 games and once again missed out on the playoffs. There eventually arose a slight bit of animosity between Stephen Curry and Monte Ellis. Monte did not believe he and Curry could coexist in the backcourt, and by the 2011 season, the Warriors had once again had a mediocre season. Stephen Curry missed a majority of the season with severe ankle injuries that required surgery, and after missing on the likes of Paul George and Gordon Hayward in favor of Ape Udo in the 2010 draft, the Warriors took Klay Thompson in the 2011 NBA draft. The Splash Bros were finally paired up, which meant Monte's days as a Warrior were coming to an end. Monte was traded to the Bucks for Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson. Despite having a pretty rough season with Curry missing a handful of games, the Warriors ended up having one of their most successful drafts of the 2010s, with Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes, and Festus Ezeli all joining the Splash Bros to become the foundation of their 73-win squad. From there, the rest is kind of history. The Warriors became a consistent playoff team with key additions like Andre Iguodala and Shaun Livingston joining later on. All the pieces were in place, and the once bottom feeders of the NBA emerged into one of the most dominant dynasties in NBA history. Now that the 2010s are over, there will be a lot of questions about where the Warriors can go heading into the 2020s. They only have a few years left of Steph, Klay, and Draymond being in their primes, so they're going to have to move quick if they want to get back to the mountaintop. Well, that's all for this one. That's how bad the Warriors were before 2015. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Just in case the party gets rowdy, I brought my crew. I don't mind if y'all wanna fight me, just don't shoot. I see you got on all this